channel and welcome in the all-new 2024 Peugeot 3008. Now this is the third generation of this particular model, and now for the first time ever you can also get an electric version, and that's the car I'm driving right now, the E3008. Now in this video I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this E3008, but also I'm going to tell you about the regular petrol versions that you can get as well. I'm going to show you the interior, the exterior, and we're going to take it out for a drive. So yeah, this may well be one of the more popular models that Peugeot is bringing to the market this year, because well, this model has always been really popular. So far they have sold around 1.3 million units of this model, and so far they have only brought 2 generations to the market, and this is the all-new third generation of the 3008. Now like I said, this is the E3008 I'm driving right now, so this is the electric version. But like I said, you can also get petrol engines. However, they all will be electrified, so you can get a mild hybrid version and a plug-in hybrid version. Now the plug-in hybrid version will be introduced later this year or maybe next year. Now the mild hybrid version will be introduced at the same time that this fully electric version is introduced, and that will be around spring, summer of 2024. Now the mild hybrid version will have a 1.2 PureTech petrol engine and a little electric motor, giving that powertrain a total system output of 136 horsepower. This electric version is a whole lot more powerful. Now the entry-level version has 210 horsepower, and that is the car I'm driving right now, because this is the version that will be introduced in and around spring or summer. This is the first version that will come to market. Now this version will have a single motor on the front axle, driving the front wheels obviously. You can also get a dual motor version, but that version will be introduced later this year, and that car will have a total system output of 320 horsepower. This entry-level version will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in around 8.7 seconds, which isn't lightning fast for an electric car. However, it is definitely fast enough for a family SUV. And the top speed of this version is 170 kilometers an hour. Now there is a third motor option. If you go for the long range version of this car, the single motor will have 230 horsepower. The long range version isn't available yet, or maybe never, with a dual motor setup. That car always has a single motor also driving the front wheels. Then let's talk batteries. There are 2 batteries to choose from. There's a small battery with a capacity of 73 kilowatt hours, which means it isn't that small, especially if you compare it to the battery that Stellantis, which is the parent company of Peugeot, is offering right now. It is actually quite big, because the biggest battery you can get at the moment at Peugeot or Stellantis has a capacity of 54 kilowatt hours. So I wouldn't say the 73 kilowatt hour battery is a particular small battery. Now again, that is the battery I have in this car. This is the entry-level version of the car, and it will give this car an official range of 525 kilometers. Now, like I said, you can also get a bigger battery, which is actually a really big battery. It's almost twice as big as the biggest battery Peugeot is offering at this moment, because the battery in the long range version has a capacity of 98 kilowatt hours, almost 100 kilowatt hours, giving that car a range of 700 kilometers. Which is really impressive, because at the moment, if you want to buy a car that has a range of around 700 kilometers, you have to buy a really expensive car like a Model S or a Mercedes-Benz EQS, and I guess also like an ID.7. But I have to say, pricing on that version isn't out yet, so maybe that car will actually be very expensive as well. Pricing for this entry-level version car, which isn't really the entry-level version, but it is the version with the smaller battery. This car starts at around 48 euros, depending on the market you are in. Now if you go for the mild hybrid version, that version is a lot cheaper. Again, depending on which country you live in, but it starts around 40-ish thousand euros. Then let's talk fast charging. Whatever version you go for, this car can always fast charge up to 160 kilowatts, no matter what version you go for, the long range, the short range. That isn't super amazing, but it isn't super bad. It's okay, I guess. And according to Peugeot, the car has a really good charging curve. So you need around 30 minutes to charge from 20 up to 80%. Unless you go for the bigger battery, that battery can charge a little bit faster. It can fast charge up to 160 kilowatts, but it needs only 27 minutes because it has a better charging curve than the smaller battery. And if you want to charge the car at home or at a public charger, the car can charge up to 11 kilowatts or 22 kilowatts, but I believe that is an option on this car. A heat pump is also an option on this car, unless you live in like a colder climate, like in Sweden or Norway, then a heat pump is standard. But in any other country, a heat pump is optional, which I think is a little bit of a shame. Then a little bit more about the battery pack. The smaller battery pack I have right now has battery cells from BYD. For now, later this year, Peugeot will move on to their own battery cells, but at the moment the cells are from BYD in the smaller battery pack. But at the end of the year they will use cells from ACC, which is a company Stellantis formed with Total Energies, and they are making batteries here in France. So at the end of the year the batteries will come from Stellantis itself, and a bigger battery pack will also have their own Stellantis batteries. Now the car has 3 drive modes. You got normal, you got eco, and you got sport. There's this little toggle switch here in the center console that you can flip to change the drive modes. Now if you go for the eco mode, the air conditioning will, well, turn down a little bit. And you also have less power. You have 170 horsepower. If you go into the normal mode, you will have 190 horsepower, and only in the sport mode you will have the full power output of 210 horsepower in this front wheel drive version. Now the driving experience in this car is pretty, I wouldn't say sporty, but it definitely isn't comfortable. I expected the car to be a little bit more comfortable, but the ride is actually pretty firm. That doesn't mean it is uncomfortable. It's still a pretty comfortable car, but again, the ride is pretty firm. The steering is pretty light. However, when you put the car in sport mode, the steering wheel gets a lot more weight to it. Obviously, it's a little bit artificial, but the car is pretty easy to steer, especially because you get this small, sporty steering wheel that you get in a lot of Peugeot models. The steering wheel is this small because you have to look over the steering wheel to see the digital instrumentation cluster in front of you. And I actually really like the steering wheel. It makes the car feel a little bit more sporty than it actually is, because the steering wheel is a sporty steering wheel. Then let's talk some practical stuff and some exterior design. Now the front end of this car still looks a little bit like the outgoing model. So you got this really elaborate grille with a pretty funky design. And you also got some new headlights with some pretty impressive daylight running lights that kind of mimic a claw of a lion, which is obviously a nod to the Peugeot logo. Now the back end design is the biggest change on this car, because the first generation of the 3008 was an MPV, the second generation was an SUV, and this car is basically like a fastback, or that's what they like to call it at Peugeot, because it has a sloping roofline at the back. It does, however, mean that you don't have less storage space, because the boot capacity is identical to that of the outgoing model. It's 520 liters. Now if you go for the dual motor setup, you do get a little bit less boot capacity. And to be honest, there are cars in this segment that offer more space in the back. You can also say the same about the backseat area. It's not super impressive, because the wheelbase on this car is actually not that big. It's only 2 meters and 73 centimeters, which is actually not a lot for a car in this segment. And this is basically one of the smaller cars you can get in this segment. It means that I'm actually pretty cramped in the back. Headroom is actually pretty decent, but legroom isn't that amazing. However, if you got kids, there's plenty of room in the back, and you also get nice amenities like a panoramic roof and USB ports in the back as well. Here up front, there's tons of room, and there's tons of space to leave all sorts of stuff. You got this cubby space here in the center console. You got a really big glove box. And the center console, it also has a pretty funky design. Peugeot likes to call the interior the panoramic eye cockpit, and it does really feel like you're sitting in a cockpit from an airplane. In front of you, you get this massive 21-inch panoramic screen. That's what they like to call this as well. It's like a panoramic screen. It's a big stretched out curved display, almost like the display you get in a modern BMW. And it floats, so it's not attached to the dashboard here on the lower part, but it's attached here from the back. So it kind of looks like it is floating, which looks pretty cool, I have to say. Now, you only get this massive screen if you go for the GT line. There are 2 lines. You get the GT or the Allure. The Allure is basically the entry-level version. And the main difference here in the interior is the screen that you get here, because if you go for the Allure, you also get a massive wide screen, but it consists of two separate screens that are pushed next to each other. And so that's basically everything in a nutshell that you have to know about this Peugeot E3008 and the Peugeot 3008. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, hit that subscribe button, and then I'll see you in the next one.